Officer Chris stands frozen in her tracks in the empty school hallway. She watches the distraught and upset student stood opposite her in the corner, gripped tightly onto a worn-out Kermit the Frog toy. Chris didn't know why, but this student made her feel uneasy. Then suddenly, Officer Chris locks eyes with the student, and a terrible feeling hits the pit of her stomach. She races into the room, grabs his homework diary from his hands, and storms into the kitchen. She takes a pen and writes a note to his teacher, pushing down on the paper so hard it nearly rips. She is livid as she writes that he will not be taking part in this in any sort of way. She slams the pen down. What did they do? Christine Chris Morrison was a police officer at the Santa Rosa Police Department. A kind and caring woman, every time Chris walked out of her front door, she knew that she would be making a difference in someone's life. So when Chris got a call from a worried teacher from a local high school, the police officer swiftly headed over, determined to help out. But she had no idea what she would find. Prior to becoming a police officer, Chris was a teacher for high-risk students for 12 years. After wanting a fresh start, she joined the Santa Rosa Police Department, where she has now been a cop for 18 years. Throughout all the years she spent as a police officer, Chris thought she had seen it all. But she was soon going to uncover something truly unimaginable that would leave her second-guessing her job. It was Monday morning and the start of a brand new week for Officer Chris. She sipped her fresh coffee, nibbled on her slice of toast, and then headed out the door ready to start her shift. She jumped inside her cop car and straight away her cell phone rang. She picked up the call, and to her surprise, it wasn't her boss or colleague. It was a teacher from a local high school, and she sounded worried. "Hi, I'm Mrs. Jones from Herbert Slater Middle School, and I've got a student who's having a problem," the startled teacher said, her voice breaking. Straight away, Chris agreed. This teacher needed help, and she was going to offer it. She put her foot on the accelerator and headed over to the school, unaware of what she was about to find. It may have been over 30 years ago, but middle school wasn't exactly a walk in the park for Chris. She was tormented by fellow students, and even now she could still sometimes hear their vicious words. But all that was in the past. Chris had moved on. She had become incredibly successful and an important person in her town. She had proved everybody wrong, but despite all her hard work to try and forget her past, Chris's world was about to come crumbling down once again. Officer Chris pulled up to the middle school and slammed her car door shut. Many gaping students were watching Officer Chris, wondering what a police officer was doing at their school. Officer Chris then headed inside the school, unaware of what she was about to uncover. As Chris walked through the corridor to meet Mrs. Jones, she tried her hardest not to think back to her school days. But with the children pointing and staring, Chris was transported back to 1975, a time that Chris had tried her hardest to forget. But then suddenly, amidst the uncomfortable memories that had started to plague Chris's mind, suddenly she heard a piercing scream that stopped her cold. It was the sound of a girl screaming, and straight away it made Chris's blood run cold. She swiftly turned around looking for the source of the noise. Suddenly a teacher appeared and introduced herself as Mrs. Smith. Then the teacher led Chris to the emotional and upset student, who was standing in the corner of the hallway, watching Officer Chris's every move. As soon as she laid her eyes on the student, Chris could see she was upset and distraught. She was stood in the corner of the room, clutching a Kermit the Frog toy. Quickly, Mrs. Smith informed Officer Chris of a student called Molly and her backstory, and as soon as she heard it, Chris felt a shiver run up her spine. You see, this student, Molly, was different from the other boys and girls in her class. She was often disruptive and often needed one-on-one care and attention. Today she was upset and refused to move, so when Chris heard this, she knew she had to help out. And there was only one thing that would work. Officer Chris approached the distressed young girl and smoothly spoke to her, but this student wasn't having any of it. Officer Chris knew she had to up her game, so she decided to do something that was simple but completely incredible. Amongst the silence in the empty corridor, Officer Chris took a deep breath before singing out loud. She could carry a tune, so everybody that was there, Mrs. Smith and the principal, was gushing over the sound of Officer Chris's angelic voice. But it was the song that Officer Chris was so effortlessly singing that made this moment even more meaningful. The song that Officer Chris sang was Rainbow Connection, made famous in 1987 by Kermit the Frog himself. Molly herself loved the sound of the officer's voice, and her face lit up with joy. All adults stood in awe and amazement, witnessing a beautiful moment between a police officer and a student. But nobody could have expected what was going to happen next. Mrs. Smith had been in the hallway and witnessed the beautiful moment between Officer Chris and Molly. She filmed it on her cell phone, posted it online, and within a matter of hours, Officer Chris had gone viral. Thousands of people all across the globe applauded Officer Chris and her kind behavior. But for Chris, it was just another act of kindness in the day of a well-meaning police officer.